stability sounds like what Nigeria needs at the moment. But I'm quite skeptical about the capacity of this government to effectively utilize that $1 billion, given its antecedents with corruption and ineffectual leadership. That said, if it's properly utilized, I think it would do us a lot of good. I'm not seeing the $1 billion being that extremely useful in the fight against Boko Haram as it stands, but I see it as some facility that has the capacity to change the tide of our military forces or our military force for good. So I'm looking at it from a longer term perspective.
What I have to say is that the main problem we are facing in the military is internal sabotage. It's a known fact that we can win this war. Our gallant soldiers have all what it takes to win this war. But the greatest challenge we have is internal sabotage. If you take a critical look yesterday, the Vanguard today, this morning, and Tribune, everyone saw what they wrote there, that the colonel coordinating 12 other soldiers, they burned down our IPC, and then they ran away into the bush, claiming that it was Boko Haram that did that, So this is only in Nigeria that you see this kind of things happening. In a situation like this, there's no way we can win this war with such things in the military. So if we can get rid of those sympathizers of Boko Haram within the ranks of the military, we will win this war. Those boys, you see them, they are just cowards. They don't. If you look at the videos they play sometimes, they are cowards. They don't have what it takes to confront our gallant soldiers. But because of the sympathizers we have within the rank of the military, and these are top high-ranking officials, they give orders, and the way it is in the military. So they obey before command. So my take in the issue of court martial is that those persons that are sentenced to death should face the full wrath of the law. I am 100% in full support of the death penalty because the law must be obeyed. And if you keep talking about human rights and all those sort of things, but lives were lost as well. The lives were lost. Boko Haram boys have dealt with so many people, and they have, they cause so many destructions, both physical and economical. So we cannot begin to sympathize those few soldiers that are sabotaging the effort of the federal government and women in Nigerians and international communities as well. Like what they said today, one of those armored personnel carriers is costing $1 million. So imagine such persons that is creating this problem for us. If you shut that one and they are sentencing him to death, some persons will still come and tell you that they have to obey human rights. As far as I'm concerned, there's no such human right. I am 100% and 1% in support. Those people will be sentenced to death.
Well, that's what they think of this contentious and controversial issue. But you too can send your thoughts using the hashtag #MutinyRingsSoldiers.
Fun, inspiration, and knowledge. That's what you get from readers, writers, publishers, and the entire book world. Get some interesting reviews, events, interviews, and latest updates from the book world. The channel's book club, inspiring you one page at a time.
Welcome back. You just heard from our online community, but then before we continue with our studio guest, let's take a look at this video or this declaration by the Chief of Defense Staff.
When we took the oath to become soldiers, we didn't say there's anything like constructive mutiny. Your own is to first obey. We took oath to defend Nigeria with everything we have. I have not heard of any American soldier turning around to run away from Boko Haram. Our own, people will jump out of APC because we want to donate APC to Boko Haram. You run away. And yet, we condemn those people to death. We didn't make the laws. The National Assembly made the law. It's there in the books. People are saying, no, you cannot do that. Why would we do it?
Chief of Defense Staff, Air Chief Marshal Alex Abadi. But then, moving forward, Demola Olariwaju joined us. Demola, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, Victor. The pleasure is mine.
Sure, you just heard him.
Yes.
Does that mean it's going to happen?
Oh, well, the Constitution is quite clear. about there's an act of the National Assembly which is the Armed Forces Act, and it gives the military the powers to put in place a court-martial process, and it prescribes the punishment, which is death, for soldiers involved in the act of mutiny. So of course we can say that yes, it is quite in line with military tradition. Personally, I believe that there must be discipline in the ranks of the military. I also believe that, particularly at this point in time where we are fighting a war, an insurgency warfare, there should be discipline in the military. Having said that, it is pertinent for us to point out that there are three ways that this matter can go away. First of all, the president himself can exercise his power as the commander-in-chief. He can exercise the power of the prerogative of mercy over these 12 soldiers who are convicted. Secondly, I think they have a chance to appeal the decision of that court-martial. And then the third process is the recent case instituted by Chief Olisa Agbakoba, declaring that Section 133 of the Armed Forces Act is inconsistent with Section 36 of the Nigerian Constitution. So, so it can still, the courts can still come out and say, look, this death is not going to happen. So I think, there are still options for them to explore.
Well, that's on the one side. But then 97 others will be court-martialed for offenses, disorderly behavior, housebreaking, even mutiny.
Yes.
There's a build-up to all these things. And some Nigerians, like you heard from the Hangout, some Nigerians are saying there's a build-up, and they're trying to say it is actually justifiable. Do you agree with that?
Well, I do think it is justifiable, okay, because it is a big problem if you have soldiers involved in things that these soldiers have been accused of. I mean, those soldiers, the 12 convicted soldiers who may or may not die, they fired shots at their commander. That is reckless behavior. For me, it even spills over into the democratic process. We've heard cases of soldiers. I mean, there's a panel, set up by the Lagos State government to look into the allegations that soldiers burnt buses in Lagos. So we have to ask ourselves, if soldiers can attack civilians and get away with it, should soldiers attack their own superiors in the military and get away with it? So I think at a point, discipline must come into the military. But of course, we cannot just say that, these soldiers should be left to die or they should be deemed guilty before being pronounced guilty by the court-martial. The process in the army all along, the lack of motivation, there are so many factors that surround, the behavior of our soldiers presently. Of course, their involvement in government also doesn't help, because most of these soldiers, have been used to being in power and so on and so forth. But at a point in time, discipline has to come into the military. Of course, it may not take the death of some for it to come, but at least there should be a process. These declarations should come. Let soldiers know that, look, if you are engaged in some acts, if you carry out some acts, you can be penalized.
Okay, so just as Nigerians are crying foul over this thing, like what we heard from the online contributors and as well as what we see daily on Twitter, Facebook, and, there is this call also by the European Union, against this sentencing. But then the European Union on the one side and then the Nigerian Constitution on the other. Who will be supreme?
Of course, the Nigerian Constitution is supreme to Nigeria. The European Union is a body. Even the European Union is not entirely supreme in the whole of Europe. Only few members, only about 17 to 19 members of the European Union have signed, their pact that there would not be death penalty all across Europe. Russia is in Europe, but Russia is not a party to that treaty. Now, so on the World Day Against Death Penalty, European Union came out and made that statement that, of course, but Nigeria is Nigeria. We have to decide what we want to do. And, like I said, the Constitution is very clear. The Armed Forces Act, which was an act of the Senate. That is why last week, during this week, you had Senator George Sekibo, who's the chairman of the House Senate Committee on Defense, come out to say that, look, we are the ones who put this Armed Forces Act in place. We are the ones who said, if any soldier does this, this is what will happen to the soldiers. The soldiers knew the repercussion of their action, and So they should know that. So the act is supreme, the constitution is supreme. However, Chief Olisa Agbakoba's case